Welcome to the Sun Today for the 10th of February 2025. I've subtitled this particular episode Trouble Brewing. Sorry it was delayed, but I was diverted by some analysis of the solar cycle that I was doing, which produced some interesting results, and I'll actually show you that in a subsequent video. By trouble brewing, I mean if you look at the bottom plot here, the radial velocity at the Earth of the solar wind is going to be between 500 and 700 kilometers per second in a couple of days' time. That almost certainly means there'll be a geomagnetic storm if the interplanetary magnetic field remains negative. Solar activity has been dropping. The sunspot number is now down to 100. We have one new numbered region, 3990, near the east limb. Flare activity was sort of variable. We had only 5 C flares, which is down from previous days, 1 M flare, which is up by 1 M flare from yesterday, and 6 coronal mass ejections, which is slightly higher than we've had for the last couple of days. The solar wind speed dropped from 650 to 550, and so is sort of similar to what it has been recently. The G1 geomagnetic storm that occurred on the 9th extended a little bit into the 10th, so we still have actually had a geomagnetic storm, and KP index is still relatively high. As far as sunspots are concerned, we had 7 regions on the disk. That's lower than we've had recently, one of which is the new, as I mentioned. There's also a new one just possibly to its south and east coming over the east limb. We'll see more of that tomorrow. The sunspot number, as I said, was about 100, and the sunspot area was 840 millionths. As I just mentioned, the geomagnetic storm re-intensified to G1 level overnight, but then decayed away, although the KP index is still between 3 and 4, which is relatively high. The solar wind speed, as I mentioned, has dropped to about 550, and the temperature is now steadily at about 100,000 degrees. Not a very exciting X-ray plot. We had 6 minor C flares and 1 M flare in that time. And the X-ray background, the base level of the red plot here, is dropping below the C2 level. CME activity has increased slightly. We had 6 coronal mass ejections recorded by the SOHO spacecraft. Solar wind speed is steady, as I mentioned earlier. And so I'm going to show a movie of the SOHO LASCO C2 and C3 coronagraph images. Unfortunately, there seems to be a lot of missing data, so we're not going to get really very many good views of this coronal mass ejections. Sorry about that. Let's take a look at the status of the coronal holes on the Sun at the moment. That V-shaped one is over near the west limb now and is probably no longer influencing Earth particularly greatly. But now we begin to see the extent and width of the coronal hole that trails back from it to the east. And at the very eastern edge, the coronal hole looks very large and very deep. Will it affect Earth? It is a bit low, so it may not, and that's probably the origin of the solar wind model that I talked about earlier. But nonetheless, it should be worth watching. It depends on how much that open field spreads into interplanetary space. It could include the Earth. It's going to be awfully close. NOAA produces a model of the solar wind based on the surface magnetic fields, and that tells us what to expect as those fields pass the Earth. This plot is a little complicated, so I'll need to explain it. The green dot here is Earth. The top plot is plasma density, which remains low pretty much throughout this period, so it's not really a problem. The bottom plot is the one we're interested in, the radial velocity, and the circle is looking down on the solar system, and the sector is looking at the side of the solar system. Well, let's have a go at forecasting what's going to happen tomorrow. I suspect that the sunspot number will decline further. I haven't looked yet. The flare activity will be low. Solar wind is moderating at the moment, but will jump up in a couple of days' time. A new geomagnetic storm is unlikely, but when this new high-speed wind reaches the Earth, one is certainly possible. Once again, thank you for listening. If you enjoy these videos, please pass them on to friends or neighbours or relations who you think might benefit from understanding more about how the sun works. And so until next time, stay safe and goodbye.